You are listening to Real Men Feel with Andy Grant. Real Men Feel encourages men to allow and express all of their emotions. Despite what you may have been taught, all emotions do serve you. Real Men Feel is committed to engaging in discussions that most men aren't having, but all men can benefit from. All links mentioned in each episode are in the show notes found on the blog at realmenfeel.org. Now, let's get to it. Hello and welcome to another edition of Real Men Feel. It is my pleasure to have you joining us today. And, life can feel challenging in the best of times, and right now probably is not the best of times for most people in the world with the ongoing pandemic crisis. And, there's a lot of metaphors and proverbs about walking through fire and the suffering, the pain, the loss of life. So today it's my pleasure to talk to an expert in actual walking through fire. Please welcome Mr. Barry Collins. He's a hypnotherapist, coach, and master firewalk instructor. Welcome to the show, Barry.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for having me.
For me, and I think for most Americans, people have heard of like firewalking. It's something that happens at like the big Tony Robbins events and that sort of thing. And I've been at personal growth events where, I've chopped my hand through the board and I've broken an arrow across my neck. And what's the lure? Why does this happen? Why does anyone want to do this? Why does this happen at events?
Okay. I'll give you my teacher's answer first, which is, why would you not? And I'll come back and I'll explain that, I'm sure, as the conversation unfolds. But yeah, you're absolutely right. All these challenge exercises or activities or empowerment activities, they've become quite common and place in the personal development field. That's overflowed into the corporate world, and when it comes to management development, senior management, CEOs, when they are looking for new ways to challenge their own beliefs, to raise their game, and to tap into as yet unreached potential, they're looking for new ways to do that. And absolutely, things like, Tony Robbins is the name that most people, if they looked into this at all, Tony Robbins is probably the name that they've come across. There's a handful of other people out there who use these activities, and they tend to attract two types of people. And initially, it can sometimes be the thrill seekers. So these are the same people, the adrenaline junkies, who last weekend they were whitewater rafting, this week is firewalking, next week is bungee jumping. And those type of activities, attract that type of person. And the other type are the people who are seekers, for want of a better description. And the exercises that we use, they're aimed towards those sort of people. Now, that's not to say the thrill seekers won't get something from it, but they'll get a lot more than they expected from it, because the seekers are the ones that it's really aimed at. And it's those people who come looking for something. Now, they might not know what it is. Yeah. They might not know whether it's something they want to get rid of or something that's a hole in their life that they're trying to fill. But these activities are not about the activities. You mentioned breaking an arrow with your throat, firewalking, and all these other challenge activities. It's not about the activity itself. So, firewalking as the sort of the big example, if you like. Firewalking is about everything except walking on fire. And that's where this unique appeal comes from. The fact that it's such an indelible experience. If you've ever done a firewalk, you'll have that experience of when you get to the end of 15 or 20 feet of glowing red embers, coals that are burning at, in excess of 1,000 degrees, you get to the far end. And our goal as facilitators of these types of events is that you get to the end and you stop and you think, 10 minutes ago, an hour ago, 3 hours ago, I didn't believe that was possible. And whether you didn't believe it was possible for anyone or even just for you, and you get to the end and you stop and you take a beat and you go, I didn't believe that was possible, but I was wrong. what else have I been wrong about in life? What else did I not think I could achieve?
Right. So it's all about identifying, facing limitations, and just smashing through them.
Yeah, well, you use the term smashing through them, but yes, getting through them in one way, shape, or form or another. A lot of people, when it comes to personal empowerment, a lot of people think it's about being, strong and powerful and in control and, taking control of everything. And it's not. For us, personal empowerment is about being okay with who you are and making a decision that's right for you in any given moment. And that can sometimes be when 300 other people are stepping up, ready to cross the coals. And the right decision for you is, tonight's not my night. And being okay with that. So it's about, making decisions that are right for you in whatever circumstances you find yourself in, so that at the end of the day, you've been true to your own heart.
So did you have an amazing experience walking fire your first time, and then you wanted to learn and teach people how to do this?
Yeah, sure. So do you want the full potted history now? Shall we do that?
Sure.
To get it out of the way?
Yeah.
Sure. So I spent 25 years in corporate, retail, sales, management. So I was Mr. Left Brain. Show me the spreadsheet. Show me the evidence. Show me the numbers. And as a way to improve sales performance in our teams, I started dabbling in alternative approaches to sales training and stumbled across the field of neuro-linguistic programming, NLP. Have you come across that?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
You have? Okay. So I came across the field of NLP back in 2004 and kind of went, ooh, after 15 years in the business, I'm actually hearing something new. And so I began delving in deeper. I wanted to find out more about what this witchcraft was. And by 2008, I'd learned enough theory. But, I always say NLP is like learning to drive a car by reading a book. It'll never tell you what it's like to feel the gear change, to feel the biting point of the clutch, to feel the wheels slipping underneath you. You need to do it. And so what became a terrible habit of mine is I tried to get as close to the source as possible. And I was actually very fortunate. I was able to train with Dr. Richard Bandler in 2008, the co-founder of NLP. And then back in 2009, I went back and did my master practitioner with him as well, while still working in the sales and corporate field. And that continued through until about 2013. But in that 5 years in between, I started to build up my own coaching practice, hypnotherapy, coaching. I was helping people get over phobias, weight loss, anxiety, stress, panic attacks, all these things that are ailments of the mind that cause dis-ease in people's lives. And by 2013, I realized that whilst sales were great, this potential that I had now was far more reaching. And so I was able, very fortunately, to walk away from that life in 2013 and focus all my intention into therapy and helping people. And for 2 years, that's exactly what I did. I built up a personal practice. By this time, my wife had also become involved in the field, and so she was seeing clients alongside me. And by 2015, we were fully immersed in the personal development field and the self-help field. And somebody mentioned firewalking. And so we had a friend who was doing a lot of fundraising for a national charity here in the UK, which supported servicemen returning to civilian life. And so we said, look, let us organize an event. We'll get somebody in to deliver this event, this firewalk, because it was on our secret bucket list. And we thought, well, if we can do it for a good cause, then we're kind of ticking two boxes. So we got somebody in to run this event for us whilst fundraising for our friends' drive. And both my wife and I woke up the next day and it was like, holy shit, how do I get more of that in my life? That was incredible. Something had changed, and it was beyond words. You couldn't put your finger on it. And so I got in touch with the guy who'd run our event, and I said, look, how do I, what's the script? How'd you get into this? Is there a school that you go to? And he said, I'm going to give you a number. you ask for Steve and you tell him I sent you. And I thought, oh no, what have I done? What have I got myself into? And 6 weeks later, I started my training as a firewalking instructor. And so I spent the 4 days, 4 very intense, very long days. It's full on, it's fully immersive. And at the end of that, I came away as a firewalking instructor, which meant that I was then able to lead these type of events and facilitate other people's change experiences. But my old habit kicked back in of, I need to get to the source. So the guy that I trained with, who is now my business partner, Steve Consalves, at Firewalking UK, where I'm now a co-director, put me in touch with the man who had trained him. And his name is Tolly Burkan. Now, Tolly Burkan, most people haven't heard of him. He took firewalking in the late 60s and early 70s, which up until that time had been a mystical, very spiritual practice. He had learned it from a woman who had gone out to the ashrams in India and had spent, almost a year there and had come back, and he'd heard about it. He'd heard about it initially from a man called Kuda Bux. If you want to go back to the 30s and 40s, you can look up Kuda Bux, who was a vaudeville entertainer. But then he got first-hand experience from his friend who'd returned from India. And he'd heard about it, he'd read stuff, and he'd seen it on the television. And his friend said, oh yeah, we used to do a firewalk every morning and every night as the sun rose and as the sun set. And at this point, Tolly was living pretty much a recluse life. He was out in the woods, living in a tent, trying to distance himself from civilization. And he said, show me. And so right there and then, Linda, his friend, built a fire. They built a fire. She prepared it, let the wood burn down. She raked it out. And then she stood up and took her shoes off and walked across it. And Tolly was amazed because his concept of this was it was some trick. There was some gimmick to it. There was something you had to do. And yet his friend had so he, without missing a beat, he stood up. He strode across the coals, got to the other end, and realized he was okay. And without thinking, he turned and walked straight back across again. And in that moment, he realized the tremendous potential for human growth, for human development through this medium as a tool for delivering a teaching. And Tolly went on to deliver this seminar, Attain Any Goal, which you can find online on YouTube. His seminar, which he became so popular, he was demanded by people like Microsoft, Remax, Coca-Cola, American Express. They all wanted Tolly Burkan to come and train their CEOs and their high-end executives. And he became in such demand, he just couldn't keep up with it. So he began training instructors. And most people know one of his instructors because in 1984, a young man called Anthony Robbins went and trained with Tolly Burkan and became a firewalking instructor. So the firewalk that Tony delivers was trained and taught by Tolly Burkan. Now, Tolly's now retired. He's in his early 70s now, but we're very fortunate. I've been out and trained with Tolly back in 2016, 2018. And so the teachings that we give when we teach instructors are not our teachings. We're very, very big on honoring our teachers, and Tolly is our teacher. And so the teachings that we share are his. And that's, why we do it the way that we do it is because it's his teachings. Mm-hmm. We're delivering his lesson, which is, his gift to humanity. He's been doing it for 5 decades, and it's time for him to kick back and put his feet up. So we're now carrying that mantle.
So initially you mentioned that it tends to attract two broad types of people, the thrill seekers and maybe the mystical seekers, to differentiate it more. Initially, what looking back, what did you see yourself as?
I saw it as I was a thrill seeker. Okay. I had friends who had done it, and most of those friends were in the personal development community. And but for me, it was like, yeah, it's always kind of been on the bucket list. Like so many people, the bucket list is there, but I wasn't doing anything about it. I wasn't doing anything to make those things happen. And so when the opportunity presented itself, I've got a friend who's doing fundraising. I know people who have now done it, so I can get a good recommendation. So we kind of put it together and it became a plan. So yeah, for me, it was very much, it was a I would say maybe 10-15% of it was I'm maybe personally going to get something out of the experience, but the vast majority of my reason behind it was a thrill seeker. It was, oh yeah, I haven't done this. You wouldn't get me to jump out of a plane or off a bridge, but I could do this. And so yeah, that was my initial motivation.
Cool. It's interesting to me that you've gotten into personal development and focused on helping and serving people, but you kind of came at it almost with the mentality that you perhaps didn't need development, and that you didn't see limitations. You just saw things to try and new and have new experiences. Is that at all accurate?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, once it got to the firewalking, I was already in the personal development field, and I thought I'd pretty much dealt with most of my stuff. Just goes to show, man plans and God laughs. So once I got into the firewalking community and realized, maybe up until that moment in time, I dealt with my stuff, but that was a day ago, a week ago, a month ago, a year ago. Stuff happens. We are, in our very essence, a work in progress until the day that we die. And so, stuff will come up, life will throw you curveballs. I can pretty much guarantee it. But it's how you approach them, those challenges that life throws you, it's how you approach them. And, I found that firewalking or the personal empowerment field is almost about developing a form of resilience to life. So that, when a curveball comes your way, it's not, oh God, don't let it hit me. It's like, wow, here is an opportunity for a rare and unprecedented experience. Let's go for it.
Yeah, it's usually, I wouldn't say usually, it seems always that's easier to do in hindsight than when the ball's coming right at you. Like, you just want to duck and run and hide at times.
Yes.
Like, what is it about fire? Like it both, there's an attraction and there's an innate fear as well. Like, so what does fire do to human beings?
Well, there's a primal thing about it. So at most people at some point in their life have been told, stay away from the fire. The fire will burn you. The fire is hot. The fire will hurt you. And so there is all of that fear that is generated by a wild, primal, uncontrolled element. And yet, by the same token, for thousands of years, people have gathered around the fire. It has been a way of bringing community together, of joining people like-minded, of common goals, of common dreams, hopes, and desires, and bringing them together, giving them a focal point. So there's this dichotomy of what is fire about, the yin and the yang, the light and the dark. And because of that, I think it provides this, as I said, this indelible experience. When you've walked across 15 foot of 1,000-degree red hot coals, you can't go back and think, well, maybe I just got lucky this time. Or, yeah, well, maybe it wasn't really that hot. It leaves you with an experience that you can't write over. I was at a friend's birthday party. It was his 40th birthday. And I hadn't seen him for a number of years, and I was telling him what I was now doing. And he says, oh, wow, yeah, my mum did a fire. Let me get her. So he brings his mum over to me. He says, oh, this is bad. He teaches firewalking now. And she went, I did a fire. Oh, it was the most amazing experience. I remember, when we spent a couple of hours with the guy getting ready, and he took us through these exercises. And then I remember when we walked, and she gave me this 20-minute step-by-step recount of her experience, of how she approached the coals, and how the coals felt underfoot, and how she felt inside, and the fear and the doubt, and then overcoming that and taking the first step. And when she stepped, she gave me all this in such immense detail. And I was like, wow, that sounds like you had a great experience. Wait, was that earlier this year, or was that last year? And she said, no, that was 20 years ago. And for me, that really drove home the responsibility I have as a facilitator of these types of events, that people won't remember me. They won't remember the words that I use on the night. They won't remember, the music that was playing or any, but what they will remember, they'll remember the fire. And it's Tolley uses the phrase that it's not what you learn from the fire, it's who you become. And that really is what it's about. For me, it's about providing the opportunity for people to become.
So since this does leave such, it can mark such a turning point and a discovery moment, and realizing you're more than you thought you were. Is this something that people do more than once? Is there benefits from doing it again years later, or how does that flow?
It's very much a personal thing. I know people who have done it once, had tremendous shifts, and have been able to bookshelf it and go, yep, I've done that. It's been a huge part of my life. It had a significant impact, but I don't have any need to do it again. Thus far, that may change. Similarly, we have people who come time and time and time again. There are people who are now part of my Firewalk team. So when I'm delivering events, they're part of my fire team. They tend my fire. And some of them started out as attendees at some of our small, evening charity events, which are fundraisers. So it's 2 or 3 hours of an evening. And then they were there again, maybe 3 or 4 months later. And then they maybe came on a full 1-day intensive. And then they said, actually, how do I get into this? How do I do what you're doing? And so they came and became an instructor. And then they came and helped on the instructor training. And there is that kind of attraction to the fire. And, I consider myself quite lucky to be able to work with the fire in what I do. But also, I'm also a little sad sometimes, because I'm normally the guy on the stage, sometimes with my wife, sometimes with my business partner, Steve. So I'm not next to the fire, because the process simply is we'll light the fire takes about an hour to burn down while we are doing stuff with the participants. We're getting them ready. And sometimes that hour with the fire can be mesmerizing. It can be hypnotic. It can be almost miraculous. And we've seen it when we have a big crowd as we light the fire, and then we take the participants away back inside to do their preparation. And this crowd is around the fire, and you see them, they just kind of drift off into an altered state, and they become mesmerized by the fire. And 10, 15, 20 minutes can pass, and there's just an eerie silence of peace and calm as all these people are just drawn in by the fire.
Mm. There's a phrase I use called borrowed benefits, where just witnessing someone's transformation, you can actually get them growth without doing it. Does that sort of thing happen for firewalking?
Absolutely. We encourage groups to have supporters come along on the night to support them. And that's kind of twofold, because it's great for the people who are taking part. They get lots of sort of moral support, lots of cheering, and it lifts their energy as they prepare to do something which they may still be terrified to do, but they're now, they've made up their mind to do it. But also those people who are witnessing it, but particularly children between the sort of 8 to 15 age group, seeing something like that can have a profound effect. Any age, but particularly that age group I notice it with, because it's something that you don't see in everyday life. Now, you might see it on TV, and you can see it on YouTube and, social media, but when you see it in the flesh, when you see it for real, and you see, the guy who sits at the desk next to you in the office, or the lady you have coffee with on a Thursday morning, or the guy who delivers your milk, when you see them doing it, they're real people. They're not just some, anonymous individual on the interweb. It's somebody who has done something unbelievable. And for that, even though you're not doing it, it can have a profound effect on you.
This is dangerous, right? It's not like I hear people are doing this. I saw a video. Let me just go build a fire in my backyard and start walking over coals.
Do not try this at home. Absolutely. There are horror stories about people who have attended a firewalk and have then thought, I can do that, and have attempted it, and it's gone horribly wrong. And they tend to be the stories that make it onto the press and the internet. You'll hear far more about those stories. Is it dangerous? Absolutely, yes. That's why you have to go through the training seminar. Now, depending on the setup and what else the event is entailing, that can be as little as an hour and a half. It could be 4 days. But is there a real danger? Yes, this is, there are companies out there that will do what we class as cakewalks. So it looks like a firewalk, and it's really, it's a bit of warm grass. Now, to kind of quantify that, people can still get very powerful changes from it, right, because of what they make the experience up here. But if you're looking for the real experience, then that's what we'll do. The process that goes behind preparing this firewalk is so involved, and our CEO, Steve Gonsalves, he was behind creating many of the standards that have been adopted by the international firewalking community in terms of the safety and the protocols that are used to minimize that risk. But the analogy I always use is this. If you've ever done a skydive, you turn up on the day and they give you lots of instruction and you sign lots of forms and they give you lots of guidance on do this, don't do that. This is when to do that. This is when not to do this. Follow all these instructions and you will have an experience. Now, if you choose not to follow those instructions, you will still have an experience, but not the one that was intended for you, not the one that we want you to have. We want you to have an empowering experience. So if you turn up on the day and go through all our preparation process, but then decide to do your own thing, you'll have a different experience. Now, I'll share a story because even that can be valuable. I had an event where it was a relatively small one. We had 25 or 30 people, and we'd gone through the preparation process. And when we teach people to walk, you're walking with purpose. You're walking with intention. This is the kind of pace that you're walking at. What are you doing? You're walking with intent. You're walking with focus. Pick your point. You decide, make the decision, and you go, and off you go. And the first woman up, she gets to the front. Okay, were you ready? Yeah, I'm ready. Okay, you're going to do this. And off she goes. Not surprisingly, she gets halfway across and has to step off to the side because, she's felt the heat. And so she steps off to the side. I've got another 24 people that I have to get through. So I get them through and then I go to her and I go, okay, so what was going on? Oh, I don't know if I can do it. No, listen, here's what's happened. Let me give you an insight. You were given instruction. You agreed that you knew the instruction. Would you still agree that you understand the instruction? Yes. Okay. Did you follow the instruction? No. And in that moment, I saw a light bulb come on. And she realized, and she shared with me at that moment, before then going and doing the firewalk again and having the experience we wanted, but in that moment, she shared with me that she just recognized a lifelong pattern. She would go to experts for their advice. I want to do this. I'm coming to you because you're an expert at achieving that. How do I do it? Okay, you need to do X, Y, Z, 1, 2, 3, A, B, C. And she'd go off and do her own thing and wonder why she didn't get the same results as the expert. Wow. Here's this moment from the fire that has taught her this lifelong pattern. I get expert advice, I don't follow it, and then wonder why I don't get the results. She's now very successful in her chosen field of endeavor because she recognized that pattern and was able to change it. But it took a lesson from the fire to bring it home.
Are the lessons learned in the training, halfway during the walk, after it, days, months, years later? Is it all over the place?
Yeah. So again, regardless of the type of event that you come to, whether it's a 4-day instructor training or whether it's a 3-hour fundraising event, in the time that you spend with the facilitator, whether that's me or one of the people that I've trained, everything we do is about helping you to recognize the opportunities that are there for you in life. Because so often we get the blinkers on, we get embedded into our limiting beliefs, and so these opportunities pass us by. And so from the moment the workshop, the seminar, whatever name you want to give it, from the moment that begins, we're working to get people to open, to open their mind, to open their heart, to open their eyes. And sometimes that'll happen halfway through. Sometimes it'll happen quite commonly as they step off the coals. Sometimes it's when they're stood looking at the coals and they kind of go, this shit just got real. And it's time to make a decision, do or do not. You know, firewalking isn't a thing that you, well, I'll give it a shot and see how it goes. You make the decision, you do it or you don't. And sometimes we'll get phone calls, weeks, months later. We had a lady who'd been on one of our instructor trainings, and she got in touch with us 9 months, 10 months after the instructor training. And she said, oh, you can't believe what's just happened to me. I was driving home last night. There was this car accident. 3 cars in front of me. The car swerved. Another car went off the road into the ditch. And a year ago, I would have sat there wondering who was going to help. And last night, when this happened, I was the first one out of my car. I was there. I took control. Okay, you need to phone, 999. You need to, make sure that person's safe. Get that engine turned off. Stop the traffic. Go back. And she just took control of the situation. And it was in that moment that she recognized the teachings that she'd been given, because all our teaching is done in a way that it really reaches into your heart. It's not conscious level teaching. And so this unconscious learning that she'd been doing in the time that she'd spent with us and beyond, because it continues, it's organic, it continues to develop. And in that moment, she suddenly recognized it.
Are there reports and shifts that you've witnessed from participants that still blow your mind, that this type of shift was enabled by a firewalk?
Oh yeah. Wow, there's so many. I mean, even just earlier this week, I received a message from a man who'd done a firewalk with us 2 years ago. And it was a 1 day, it was a 2 day intensive. And there was a lot of goal setting, a lot of planning, a lot of removing limiting beliefs, confidence building, a lot of timeline, setting out goals, timelines. And he got in touch earlier this week with photos of his Zen garden. Because when he'd come to us 2 years ago, he's a hypnotherapist. And one of the things he wanted to do was to develop a property which had his own Zen garden, his koi pond with the koi carp, his therapy room at the bottom of the garden. And he sent me photos of this beautifully manicured lawn with the gravel and the koi carp and the wood paneling paths gently meandering through, and his therapy room. And he said, I just want to get in touch and say thank you, because if it hadn't been for that 1 day, none of this would have happened. It's like, wow. And beyond those 2 days, I hadn't really thought about, any of the goals that he'd set. I've spoken to him several times in between, but not specifically about the work that he'd done on that day or the 2 days with us. So to see people have a shift that sets the path for them for some amount of time into the future, and for them then to achieve those goals is profound and very humbling.
Yeah. Do you often hear from people? Do they check in? Is there any sort of follow-up?
Yeah. So, I mean, we within the firewalking community, so people who have gone on to the instructor path, it's a very close-knit community here in the UK. Even, internationally, last year, 2019, the UK was very fortunate. We were able to be selected as hosts of the International Firewalk Gathering. So we had, I think it was about 19 different countries, represented at the Firewalk Gathering here in the UK. And it's a huge honor to be able to do that. So the community is widespread, but very connected. And so there is very much that support mechanism. I've done courses in the past where you do your 4, 5, 6 day training, and that's it. You've got your certificate. You never hear from them again until they want to sell you something else. Whereas the community that we're within, we want to support our instructors. We want them to support us. We welcome them to come back and support in our events. If they need support with their events, we have a way, depending on what they need, where we can support them. The individuals who have attended individual events, as I say, many of them come not for the personal development, but for the fundraising or, the thrill seeking. But even those people get something that they didn't expect from it. And there's always that open channel of communication where people come back and say, I couldn't believe that I was going to do that. And yet 2 hours with you and I was able to do things, and I got over a lifelong phobia or a lifelong fear, or that thing that, I've carried around with me for 20 years. It's gone now. It just doesn't bother me.
Do you see many couples doing this together, or entire families doing the process together?
Sure. So when I first did the instructor training, my wife kind of went, "Oh yeah, I love the firewalk. You should go and learn to do that," and sent me off to do the training, which I did as a dutiful husband. And then, of course, I came back and went, "Oh my God, you have to do this training." So 6 months later, she went and did the training. And then a year later, it was like, "Oh my God, that was amazing." So we sent our eldest daughter to do the training. So we are a family of firewalking instructors. I'm a master instructor. My wife is an instructor. My daughter is an instructor. So obviously, they're primary components of our delivery team when we're doing events. We've had several couples who've attended the instructor training, who have, sometimes it's one of them has come, and then they've come back with their other half and redone the training when their partner has been doing it for the first time. We had a beautiful couple who I'm very fortunate to consider very close friends, and they came, I think it was about 1.5 years ago, on the instructor training, and they were in a bad place, personally, in the relationship. And this was kind of, the last ditch attempt. This was, the Hail Mary before calling it a day. And I'm delighted to say 1.5 years down the line, not only are they stronger than ever, they're, more successful than ever. And they sent their 18-year-old daughter, as soon as she was 18, they sent her on the training so that she could have that sort of experience. So yeah, families, couples, absolutely. On the events where it's just sort of experiential, yeah, a lot of the time people will come with in groups or in couples. Sometimes it's work groups. Regardless of who they're there with, they tend to come with people, and it's more for the moral support. When we do the intensives where we kind of get beneath the surface of stuff, yeah, we'll get people who are there for the personal development.
So since this is often sort of a team building work event, do you ever have participants that just really just don't want any part of this, and they're like kind of feel forced along?
Yeah. So we're always very careful when we're dealing with corporates. We always ask them to make it abundantly clear to their participants what it is that they're going to be doing. Occasionally, the corporates decide that they know better, and we end up with a room full of people who have no idea why they're there. And that's always interesting and slightly challenging. But in the main, most people are, they're aware of why they're in the room. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're still fully engaged. We still, we've had it where we've had, 200, 300, 400 people in the room, and you'll see the row at the back. You can always tell on their phones and having a chat. When you're giving very important safety instructions, like, if it feels hot, keep walking. You're not finished yet. On their phones, taking notes and, really just generally not paying attention. And so you kind of, you're watching for those, and you're questioning, if you see those people then come up to get ready to walk, you really have to kind of pay attention and catch them and go, are you sure you want to do this? And stop, because if people don't want to do it, but they feel coerced into doing it, that's not personal empowerment. I would much rather somebody gets to the calls and goes, this isn't for me. I'm not doing this. And I'll probably celebrate that more than somebody who does it because everybody else is doing it. Because that's truly impersonal empowerment. That is going, I'm doing what's right for me. Doesn't matter what you're all doing. I'm doing what's right for me. And that that's really personal empowerment.
So it's not at all someone signs up for this, it's time to go, and you force people across the coals.
Oh no,
it really is up to them.
Absolutely not. Everything we do on all our events is voluntary. We will challenge people, and we will challenge them. Why do you not want to do this? Is it fear? Is it some belief that you're not capable? And if that's the case, then we can work with that, because I know everyone who comes on our courses is capable of doing it. We did a charity event, a fundraising event for Horseback UK here in the UK, which again is part of the veteran support program. And they use equine therapy as a way of re-enabling and rehabilitating ex-servicemen and women. And one of I think he's the president or the vice president, a fantastic man, Jason Hare, he got in touch with me once the event had been booked. And, he says, listen, really keen to do this, but I have a challenge, which is I did my 3-year service out in Afghanistan. And on 3 days before I was due to return, I found an IED with my left foot. And so I have a prosthetic left leg. And, I don't have a left hand. Can it still be done? And we were like, if there's a way, we'll make it happen. And so we had several phone calls, a few meetings, and eventually, he was able to do this. It was some handcrafted fire retardant boot that was made specifically for his prosthetic, because I didn't want to damage his several £1,000 prosthetic. That was my main concern, and getting him across safely. So he'd fashioned himself this fire retardant boot from, like welder's gloves, so that he was able to do this. Now, initially, he'd kind of approached me. He'd obviously had it in the back of his mind that it might be possible. And that, to me, is actually more open-minded than most of the people who come to our seminars, because most of them are sitting there and it's like, okay, it's time to start the seminar. And on most faces I see, how did I get talked into this? This is, I can't believe, there's no way that I can do this. There's no way this, or some variation thereof. And that's normal. The ones I get concerned about, the ones at the start of the night who go, yeah, I've got this. It's okay. I don't need to sit through the seminar, but I'll do it anyway. I'm like, you're going to be trouble. You're going to get a lesson tonight. But the ones who turn up with fear and humility before the fire, yeah, I will work with them as much as it takes. And I'm confident that if someone wants to, we can find a way to get them the experience that they came for.
And have you had people that, for whatever reason, decide not to do it, return later, more confident, like, yeah, now I'm ready now, and take the program again?
Have we had that? I don't think so, to be honest.
Wow.
I mean, very few people on the night decide not to do it.
Okay.
I could probably, in the 5 years that I've been doing this, I could probably count on 2 hands the number of people who have gone, tonight's not my night. And I've probably led, 3,000 people across the coals. Mm-hmm. So, less than 10 people out of 3,000, I'm willing to accept that. Yeah. And, sometimes, no matter what the reason is, unfortunately, if I've got 50 or 60 or 70 other people in the room, I can't get into working with that one people and leave 69 other people waiting whilst we get this one. Sometimes you just have to go, okay, that's fine. I respect your decision. Let's give John a hand. Let's celebrate his decision. He's making a decision that's right for him tonight. So let's celebrate that. Okay, who's up next? And take it that way. That's all you can do. But, if somebody wants to do it, but they're struggling, I'll happily work with them.
Yeah. Cool. So for doing this for 5 years and 3,000 walks, is there a favorite aspect? Do you like training new people to go out and spread this? Is it that first timer? Is it someone that has a breakthrough on site?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's so many moments, but the real driver for me is being able to share these lessons with someone who is then going to share them with their tribe. So the instructor training absolutely is for me the pinnacle, and it's 4 days. It's four very intense days. We start at 9 a.m. each morning. We run till, if we finish early, it's maybe 9:30 or 10 at night. I've seen us sometimes run till midnight or just after. Every day. Obviously we break for lunch, we break for dinner, but it's full on. It's just you're from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next, and every night is a firewalk. Most people find by the end of the 4 days of the instructor training, they've completed over 100 firewalks personally.
Wow.
And that is, for an instructor, it's kind of twofold. First of all, it's getting you past that, oh, I don't know if I can, I'm not sure, and getting you to the point where you're like, okay, I'm comfortable with this now. But as an instructor who's then going to lead events for other people, it also lends a certain amount of credibility that you can walk into a meeting and somebody, to engage someone in a discussion about why they should choose you. And you can say, well, yeah, listen, I've done this over 100 times personally. To give you the comparison, I did a little snooping around a competitor's event, not someone that we had trained, it was someone else. And we got talking to the people who were looking after the fire whilst the seminar was taking place inside. And I said, oh, what's going on here? Oh, it's a firewalk. Oh, wow, okay. And they explained what that was. And, oh, great, yeah. And have you done this? Oh, yeah, I must have done this at least 2 or maybe even 3 times. Really? Okay. My team is made up entirely of tenders who have gone through the instructor training. So everyone on my team has walked well over 100 fires. My wife and I kind of have a little bit of a competition going on. We're both somewhere in the mid 300s at the moment. It's just a bit of fun to kind of roughly keep count. But it's something that once it gets into you, you're drawn to it if it's in your soul.
So even someone that's done it hundreds of times, is there still a thrill, a wow, an insight each time you do this? Yeah.
So I mentioned the Firewalk gathering, the International Firewalk gathering earlier. And that is a gathering of firewalking instructors, and firewalking masters and firewalking elders, people who have been in the community for 3 or 4 decades. And because it's people who are very comfortable around the fire and who are all, experienced firewalkers. So we're able to do things that we wouldn't do on a charity event or a corporate event, because these, in those circumstances, most times everybody's a first timer or with very little experience. So, for example, on a corporate or a fundraising firewalk, we might do a walk that's going to be somewhere around 1,000 degrees, and it might be between 12 and 15 feet long. That's controlled by the type of wood that you use, the way that it's prepared, all of those aspects. At the Firewalk gathering, we make the joke that the first thing we burn at the Firewalk gathering is the rule book. And so what we kind of go, okay, what can we do that we really like to do that we wouldn't normally have the opportunity to do? So in Hungary 2 years ago, we had 2 fires that were about 9-10 feet high in pillars and maybe 10 feet apart. And when they were at their hottest and flames, hitting 25 feet in the air, in Hungary, the fire is considered a purifying element. And so to be purified by it, you must show humility before it. And the way that that's done is you walk through between the 2 pillars. The only way you can do that safely is to shield your face, to show humility before the fire. But you can feel the intense heat on either side of you. In the UK, at the end of the gathering last year, we, I say these fires are normally 12 to 15 feet. We made, it was classed as an infinity firewalk, which is the figure of 8. But that figure of 8 was, if you did 1 lap, it was 108 feet long. And people were doing multiple laps on it. So is there still a thrill? Is there still something to draw you back? Absolutely, yes. There's always a new way to connect with the fire, to receive a new lesson from the fire. And so, yeah, I think that's why some people, once it gets into their blood, once it gets into their soul, they keep coming back time and time again, because there's always something to learn.
Yeah, cool. And is there a minimum age for a participant to do this?
So this is where it gets a little sticky. So it depends, certainly here in the UK, for example, our insurance will allow us to have participants of 18 years and above. Participants must sign a waiver, a release form, which declares that they understand there is some risk involved in what they're about to do, but they're being invited to take part voluntarily at their own risk. So they're not under any obligation to take part. And so that way, if they don't choose to take part, that's fine. They've declared that they understand that that is an option, and they understand what the risk is. Mm. So to be able to sign that legally, you need to be 18 years of age. Our policy also does allow us from 16 years of age and above with parental consent, with a parent in attendance. Now that becomes a little bit sticky, because if you have separated families and one parent consents and the other one doesn't, and so it can get a bit messy. So 18 years and above is safer. Now, is it that on your 18th birthday you suddenly become fire retardant? Absolutely not. My granddaughter, she did her first firewalk when she was 9, with full parental consent of both her parents. In Latvia, where some of my colleagues train, they have children. Firewalking in Latvia is very commonplace for children as young as 3 or 4 years of age. It's part of the culture there. So, is there a minimum age? No, I don't think so. It just depends on the cultural implications of permitting it and facilitating it, and the legal implications as well.
Yeah. And what about to go on and become an instructor?
Sure. For that, it's 18. And that's simply because, again, there's an agreement that takes place, but also the process that we lead people through is very intense. And it could, if you're not emotionally mature enough to be able to undergo that process, it could be damaging. And so we're very conscious. The team that we have are very experienced. Our chief fire tender, a man called Tim, who trained alongside me when I did my initial training. He's been on every instructor training. Everyone that comes on to assist on the training is an instructor in their own right. So everyone there knows what's going on. They know what people are going through because they've been through it, or their version of it. And these are deliberately small groups, never more than 24. And again, it's so that nobody slips through the cracks. Nobody gets missed. Nobody can hide at the back. But it also means that we can manage them, because we'll, if we've got 24 people, we'll typically have 10 crew plus 2 presenters. That's sort of the level where we'll make sure that everybody is getting the care, the attention, the nurturing that they need.
Beyond empowerment, is there kind of a most common or universal aha that most people get by walking the fire?
Yes. They kind of get the first level of it, I would say, which is that we create our own reality. And by that, I mean that, there's all this stuff going on around us. You mentioned at the very start about the COVID-19 situation that we're currently all experiencing in some way, shape or form around the world at this moment in time. And, there's a lot of naysayers and doom and gloom around this. And personally, I see it as an opportunity. I'm very optimistic about, where we're going from here. So there's all this stuff that happens outside of us, and we can't control that. What we can control is what goes on the inside. And so in life, as I mentioned, life will throw you curveballs. I guarantee it. And it's how you choose to view those challenges. If you see them as opportunities, as you see them as ways to grow, to learn, to become more, then you will welcome those challenges. If you see them as obstacles and things to hold you back, to tie you down into the past, into sadness and pain and anger and hurt, they'll do that as well, if you let them. And so that I say that's kind of the first level. And once you begin to explore that, you can get to the point where you understand that you can choose your own response to anything. That no matter what happens around you, how you respond to it is an internal job. And you know what? I'm going to do this, if this is okay, Andy. This isn't something I would normally do, but I thought it might be something that you might appreciate, and this is where the conversations ended up. So this is an exercise which is about it's about bliss, and about how we can choose our response to anything. And it's a demonstration of that, because it's very easy to throw the words around. Mm-hmm. But as a firewalking instructor, as a firewalking master, one of the things we encourage is that people walk their talk. And so when we talk about being able to choose your response in any given moment to any given set of circumstances, what we can do is we actually learn to change our body at the cellular level. Because, you know, if you're aware that if you go into a state of stress, that your body releases certain chemicals into your bloodstream, into your muscles, you get a stress response, it makes you tense, it can cause dis-ease, pain, unhealthiness. And yet, if you choose a different response, if you choose to go into a state of bliss, a state of happiness, a state of peace, it releases a different chemical response in your body. And so it can promote mental health, physical health, simply through the power of your own thinking. And so, as a way of demonstrating this, what, as a master, we learn to do is, I don't know if you'll be able to see this quite clearly. This is if I put that there, okay. That's a 5-inch doll needle. And when we go into a state of bliss, it causes a certain chemical reaction in your body that allows you just to soften, to open, and change at the molecular level, so that you can begin to open to new ideas. I'll try not to do this too quickly, because then you become like a river, and you can never stand in the same place twice in a river. And so you can begin to enter a state of bliss very easily. And you can begin to enjoy the most obscure things. Now, obviously, I'm not promoting that everyone stick a 5-inch needle through their hand. Mm-hmm. But what I'm suggesting is that you consider how you respond to things. You don't just go to the default response. That you consider. You see, that's not even bleeding.
Wow.
That if you go into a state of bliss, all that tension and stress that's associated with anxiety, with panic, that's not actually doing any good. Mm. If you just kind of accept that what's going out there in the world today, yeah, it's far from ideal. But if you can make the decision to be the best that you can be, regardless of what's going on out there, in any given moment, then things that might seem impossible become everyday.
Very cool. Whew, yeah, for those just listening, Barry put a 5-inch needle through his hand. And I could feel my tension rising just watching it. But yeah, you're in your state of bliss. So that's really neat. And you know, I talk about that often with clients that talk, you know, that person made me angry and they made me upset. And like, no, something happened and you chose your reaction. Might have been unconsciously, but it was up to you. Nobody can make you feel anything.
Absolutely.
And if you're buried, nobody can even make you bleed. Cool. So you did mention COVID, and I have too. And I mean, how this has impacted your ability to do your firewalks and events.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, from March, when here in the UK we went into lockdown on the 23rd of March, there was already sort of from around the 10th of March there was whispers that things were going to have to change, and so in March alone we had 5 events that were due to take place that have been postponed. A week ago today, we would have been into the second day of our Firewalk Instructor Training, our spring training, which has now been postponed until August. So yeah, because the activities that we do, they kind of rely on 2 things: gatherings and, mixing with more than one family, more than one household. It kind of put that's it. You're suspended until further notice. So yeah, I mean, the great thing is that a lot of the work we do is with charities, and those charities now are probably going to need our help more than ever, simply because all their fundraising events over the summer are probably going to be postponed, if not cancelled. And so when we come into the autumn months for us, I'm expecting we're going to be very, very busy. And for me, this is great because I get to take some time for me and just kind of unwind, relax, recharge, and get ready for the excitement that lies ahead when the restrictions ease off sufficiently that we can move forward and do what we do.
Cool. So you're hoping by August to be able to do things?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, August is when our next event is. We've got in August we have Fire Dragon, which is a fire performance or fire arts training experience. So a lot of fire eating, fire breathing, juggling, a lot of flow arts. So we have some top performance instructors from Canada and from Australia and the USA, all coming here to the UK to deliver that training. That's the first one of kind of the autumn events. So fingers crossed that it's all going to go ahead. The way things are looking at the moment, it is looking as if it might just be possible, and we may have to, change the way that we do some of the stuff, but it looks like it will go ahead, and I'm very hopeful.
Yeah, good, because you can debate what's the worst aspect of this whole pandemic, but certainly a major part of it is fear. So to have a process that can help people after this, my dog is knocking down barriers. To have a process that can let people break through fear, and perhaps old and even new limitations are rising up in the minds of so many people during this time of being locked down and having so much uncertainty about the future. So yeah, I hope you're going quickly and are serving more people than you ever have before.
Thank you. Yes, that is our intention, just to continue doing what we're doing and just continue reaching more people and touching more lives in a positive way.
Cool. And what's the best way for people to learn more about the programs, more about you?
Sure. So firewalk.co.uk is the best website to visit. You'll find all our media channels on there. So from there, you can find us on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. And you'll also find contact details if you want to send us an email or give us a call. And whether that's booking an individual event, whether it's attending an open event, if you just want to have the experience of firewalking, and maybe some other stuff that we do on the night, or if you want to book us for your corporate clients or more, or you want to become an instructor yourself so you can lead your own events. And we typically the one that we've just had to postpone, we had attendees coming from 9 different countries around the world to attend. So it is truly an international training. We're also the UK's only purpose-built firewalking academy. We have 8 acres which we use exclusively for this training. So yeah, it would be great to see somebody there.
Yeah, cool. And I gotta tell you, this I don't even know, for whatever reason this wasn't on my bucket list, but after talking to you and getting all the empowerment and the stories and benefits, like, oh man, I totally want to do this now. So I look forward to that.
Done.
Yeah, good job. Well, cool. Thanks again, Barry. Thank you for everything that you shared today and are sharing with the world. And again, look forward to you being very busy and serving charities and the personal growth of individuals. And for all of you personal growth individuals listening, I know you got some insights out of this, and continue to push your own boundaries in whatever way you can. And through all this crazy time, as always, be good to yourselves. Thank you for listening to Real Men Feel. Contact us at realmenfeel@gmail.com. Learn more about Andy Grant at theandygrant.com. Please subscribe to this podcast and leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, TuneIn, or wherever you are discovering Real Men Feel.